For more on all this, we get three views. Seth Jones is a senior political scientist at the research organization RAND. He was an advisor to the U.S. military in Afghanistan last year. Thomas Johnson is a research professor at the Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey, California. He focuses on Afghanistan and Central Asia. And Steve Coll is president of the New America Foundation and a writer for The New Yorker. He's the author of Ghost Wars, The Secret History of the CIA, Afghanistan, and bin Laden. Thank you all three for being with us. Seth Jones, to you first. Let's focus on this important capture. First of all, we do believe that this Mullah Baradar has been captured, even though the administration isn't confirming it.
Yes, most of the evidence does point to the strong likelihood that he has been captured. And
how big a deal do you think it is?
Well, it's probably first important to know that the insurgency is not hierarchically structured. There are a range of insurgent groups. There are a range of tribes, sub-tribes, drug organizations. The Taliban is the largest insurgent organization. This is probably important for three very brief reasons. One is Mullah Baradar is the second in command. He is a primary operational commander involved in running a range of the senior shuras among senior Taliban officials.
Shuras being?
Councils. The Taliban is broken down into a series of committees or councils. Third, it does demonstrate, second, it does demonstrate improved Pakistani cooperation with the U.S. on the Afghan insurgent groups. The Taliban has not been a major focus of operations. And then third, I'd also note that this does now begin to put into question whether the insurgency is tipping now, with at least a major senior Taliban official now being captured.
Steve Coll, how do you see this? How important?
Well, I think it's potentially very important. The Pakistanis, as Seth notes, have not gone after the Quetta Shura, as it's called, the supreme leadership of the Afghan Taliban, in a vigorous way. The fact that they apparently partner with the United States suggests they may be breaking their past pattern of catch and release, where they've made symbolic arrests to please the West but not change their fundamental tolerance of the Taliban on Pakistani soil. But let's see whether this becomes part of a concerted effort against Taliban leadership, and whether it also leads the Pakistanis to try to push the Taliban to convert their violence into political negotiations with Kabul. That would be a big tipping point in the insurgency.
Tom Johnson, what do you look for to determine the significance of this?
Well, I think that what's very important here is that there's been rumors for many months that there's fissures and disputes between different leaders in the Quetta Shura.
And again, to define the Quetta Shura.
The Quetta Shura is basically the leadership council of the Taliban. And Baradar is viewed as one of the more pragmatic members. And I think that there's long been rumors that some of the hardliners have disagreed with Baradar and this has had major impacts relative to how they viewed questions of reconciliation and negotiations. And there's been further rumors that a military leader by the name of Mullah Zakir actually might have ratted out Baradar. So I think that this could be very significant relative to the notions of reconciliation and negotiations, two key aspects of our counterinsurgency strategy. I would disagree relative to what this means vis-a-vis the Pakistan cooperation. Let's not forget that just 2 weeks ago, Secretary Gates directly asked Islamabad to increase military actions against the Afghan Taliban in the tribal areas of Pakistan, ostensibly in North Waziristan. And the Pakistani military, as well as Islamabad, came back and said, no, we're not going to have any new military operations this year. So I think this is very significant.
Okay, I want to divide out that point because you raised it again about the significance of the fact that the Pakistanis were part of this despite their historic support for the Afghan Taliban. But what about Mullah Baradar himself? We just heard Tom Johnson say he was seen by some as a moderating force in the Taliban. Is it known whether that's the case or not?
Well, it's unclear what the reason and why he was captured. I mean, Tom is right that there have been fissures within the inner Shura. Mullah Zakir has pushed for some of the suicide attacks. Baradar has actually asked that the Taliban be careful in targeted assassinations and suicide attacks. because the insurgency is about hearts and minds, and he's recognized that. So what's unclear, though, is what the reasons within Pakistan were for targeting Mullah Baradar in this case, and as Steve noted earlier, whether this is part of a longer-term strategy or this is a one-off capture.
Steve Cole, how do you see that?
Well, I think the Pakistanis have a record of going after militant groups on their territory when they see it as being in their own interest. So if a Pakistani Taliban faction wages revolutionary violence against the Pakistani state, the state responds. The question here is, what does the Pakistani Army and Intelligence Service see as being in their interest in the prosecution of the Quetta Shura, or potentially the conversion of the Quetta Shura into negotiators in a reconciliation strategy? I think ultimately Pakistan is going to play its hand to defend its own national interests as the Army and the leadership interprets them. Let's hope that that leads towards negotiations.
And Tom Johnson, focusing back again, though, on the Taliban in Afghanistan, does this clearly weaken them? Or because they are so divided, is there a question about that?
Well, let's not overstate the divisions, but I think it's really too early to tell. The Quetta Shura is basically the command center for the insurgency in the south. But that being said, the Taliban have morphed into more of a franchise organization, so their regional and district leaders have degrees of freedom in their actions. So I think it's basically too early to tell. But there's no question that he's an important player, and this is a major event for the United States as well as NATO.
What do you think the immediate effect could be on the Taliban, Seth Jones?
Well, I think there are two impacts. One is that this may cause some short-term impact on the inner Shura's ability to run the strategic and operational components of the insurgency. And he was the one that was giving guidance in some of these Shura meetings in Pakistan of senior shadow governors and military commanders. There may be a short-term impact until it's clear that he's been replaced. Second issue is, again, the bulk of any insurgency is of the local population. Most of them in Afghanistan tend to be fence-sitters. Part of the issue are many of them going to begin to sort of question openly who's winning?
Steve Call, so how quickly should we expect the Taliban to sort of reorganize themselves to make up for a loss like this?
Well, I think watching what they do and announce over the next week or two is an important indicator of how they interpret this inside the Quetta Shura, how serious the fissures may be. The Taliban have developed very sophisticated messaging and media operations, so they'll want to message some narrative of continuity and succession. But let's see, as we've seen in the case of the Pakistani Taliban, after the decapitation of leadership, it's taken them some time, and they've exhibited disarray in the succession process. Let's watch and see what happens with the Quetta Shura here.
Tom Johnson, I want to come back to this big military operation in Helmand province in Marja. First of all, what is the goal? And second, do you think they're going to be successful?
Well, I think that General McChrystal recognizes that we can't kill and capture our way to victory in Afghanistan. And I think that we've heard different statements coming out of the military concerning government in boxes and this notion that we need to separate the people, the population from the Taliban insurgents. I find it somewhat interesting that it was such a large force, 15,000 troops going in to Marja, where nobody suggests there were more than 1,000, maybe 2,000 Taliban at the most. But I think that what the Taliban have to do here is they recognize that if they don't lose, they win. That's to suggest they're not going to come out and face us kinetically, because they recognize that a stalemate is a victory for them. Patience is on their side.
Seth Jones, finally, do you think it'll be successful?
I think the key issue will probably not be the military operations. The key issue will be negotiating with the key power brokers in the Marja area. They tend to be arranged with tribal and other community leaders. And the question is, will the combination of Afghan and NATO forces be able to coerce or co-opt these power brokers over the long run to ensure that they stay on their side as opposed to going back to the Taliban? Because in this area of Helmand, there's a constant shift between both sides.
All right, it's an ongoing operation. Seth Jones, we thank you. Tom Johnson and Steve Call. Gentlemen, thank you all.
Thank you.